What's going on, guys? Welcome to a new video where today we are talking about the iPad. Now, I seem to bring this topic up a lot, and I understand that some people might find this topic a little bit annoying at this point, but I keep finding use case scenarios for the devices that I use. One of the things I find interesting about the iPad is the fact that there are a lot of apps that you can use on the iPad that you really can't do on Android device. Don't get me wrong, Android does have a pretty small-ish selection of tablet apps, and for most people, those apps would probably work just fine. But if you are a professional creator, not necessarily in that order, there are a bunch of apps you can take advantage of using the iPad. Most notably, Premiere Rush, LumaFusion, Photoshop, if that's your kind of thing. There's also the Affinity products. But I'm not here to talk about the creative process. I'm here to talk about the productivity process, the apps that I use on a daily basis to get my work done. And I'm going to start with probably one of the most important applications, and that is Microsoft Word. And I've talked about this before, and I've always said that Word on the iPad is always a interesting product. It is, for the lack of a better term, probably the best product that I would use on the tablet. And the reason I say that is it feels pretty feature rich. I've used it on Android-based devices, and I always found that the experience really isn't all that great. So here we are in Microsoft Word. I have my on-screen keyboard turned on so you guys can actually see what I'm typing. I can go, hello, my name is Ian, and this is, don't mind the typos here, my video about product TVT. There we go. So as you can see, basic functionality. What I find more interesting is not even necessarily the fact that you can type up documents, but the fact that the user interface kind of gets out the way. So here's the top toolbar, and obviously you can come up here and you can change the font, or you can change the font size. You could do all sorts of text effects, and the user interface is like simple. It's not in the way. It's not there to, take up any extra space. It's just there. And that's what I love about Microsoft Word on the iPad. Now, this is not the only productivity application that I do use on a daily basis, but it is one of the apps that I consistently come back to get work done, because a lot of what I do depends on writing, not necessarily scripting, just writing show notes, collecting my thoughts, writing blog posts, because I write blog posts in Microsoft Word like a old person. Anyway, Microsoft Word is the big one that I use on a daily basis. Now, as you can see, I have Premiere Rush, Photoshop, Illustrator, Acrobat, LumaFusion. Don't mind the Me at Walmart app, that's for work. I have Squarespace app, which I really don't use all that often. I really don't do anything with the website on my tablet because I really just don't feel the need to. I do all that work on the desktop. And then I have Remote Desktop. Remote Desktop, for the lack of a better term, is probably one of the most useful apps, especially if I am away from my desktop. I can just pull it up here, and then I can just if I wanted to go into Premiere or Photoshop, I could do that. I have access to all the applications that I would typically have on my desktop without even having to sit in front of my desktop. That's what makes this combo touch combination really useful, and it's just a really good time when it comes to that. We're going to switch gears here and kind of talk about some of the other applications that I have. Obviously, for entertainment, you can see all the apps that I have here. Anchor is one of the bigger ones. Again, this is not really an application that I use on the iPad per se, as you can see, I'm not even signed in right now, but Anchor is one of the applications that I use to manage the podcast to see how well the podcast is doing. Um, and, just a whole bunch of other different things. YouTube Studio, again, another application that I use on occasion. I don't really pay attention to metrics on any of the videos that I do because I don't really feel that information is useful for the content that I create. And if people watch my videos, they watch my videos. If they don't, well, they don't. Some other kind of highlights here. I do have some Google apps that I use on a regular basis. Google Photos is one of those applications that come to mind. It's an application that I rely on a lot, especially when I am shooting videos like this, because especially when I'm working specifically on the iPad, you cannot transfer files from the phone to the iPad because it is not supported. At least I haven't found a way that it is supported, at least at this time. And an iPhone, this process would actually be less painful because I'd be able to use AirDrop. Something I really have wanted to use, but I just really don't have the ability to. I've tried using cable. I've tried using a bunch of different services, found that I didn't really care for it, so I just use Google Photos for most of what I actually do. Another application that I use, I actually use a combination of Google Chrome and Safari, depending on the task that I am doing. Most of my web browsing goes through Google Chrome because that's the browser of choice that I use, personal preference, out of habit mostly. I have used other web browsers, and I always just, the sad thing is on the iPad, I always find myself going back to Safari at some point or another for compatibility reasons or just because it's more convenient, especially when I am downloading and saving images and potentially using some of those images as wallpapers. Safari does a better job at handling those kind of things than Chrome does. So that's one of those things that, it is what it is. And then I have my social media applications. I have Facebook, Messenger, Signal, which I don't use that often, and Twitter. And that's really the applications that I use on the iPad. The iPad is definitely more useful now than it was probably about a year ago. When I purchased the iPad, I didn't really know what I was going to do with it because I had recently purchased the Galaxy Tab S5e at that point. One of the biggest mistakes I made, especially when I was doing this iPad as a PC challenge for the 13 days that I did it, is I didn't take into account the storage. I made the biggest mistake purchasing the iPad 7th generation with only 32 gigs of storage. So many bad choices. And then either case, the next device I'm going to end up buying for the iPad when it comes time to renew or upgrade is going to be iPad Pro, more than likely. That's what I use on my iPad. I'd like to know what you guys use in those comments down below. That's really all I have for today, folks. I'll see you guys next time.